King discovers that he's basically a god, and he is not particularly pleased about this revelation. It does not provide him what he really wants for himself, and it provides him a lot of insecurity and uncertainty about the future that he absolutely does not want. Instead of a loving, caring biological family that provides him a community he can be a part of, and provides him a heritage and a series of shared values he can learn from, all he has is power. All he has is status and, ostensibly, influence. But he doesn't really want any of that, and this marks a striking turn from the person he was at the beginning of the series. When we first see him, all he wants is an army to command and minions to order around. He thinks of himself as this grandiose, majestic figure, and this is comical, but one does get the impression that this is at least what he wants for himself. But now he really doesn't. Now that he has this title of being the Titan, and now that he knows that unless he dies, he will eventually grow into this incredibly forceful and skilled and almost omnipotent figure, he feels quite dissatisfied. We see very clearly how much he has changed without the show needing to draw a lot of explicit attention to how much he's changed. He doesn't want subjects to order around. He doesn't want people to treat him like he's anything other than what he is. This passionate and curious, but still lost kid trying to figure out his place in the world. He's made quite uncomfortable when Lilith begins groveling to him, and then ends up being so unaware that she wonders when he runs away if she just wasn't groveling hard enough. Lilith has a bizarre and quite unfortunate tendency to bow down to authority figures, as we saw with the Emperor back in Season 1, even when this isn't good for her, or even what she, thinking reasonably, would want for herself. But she still cares about King. By the end of the episode, that's clear, but she doesn't have the same familial bond with him that Luce and Ida do. Ida raised him, and Luce is his sister and acts like it. King even calls her his sister a couple episodes ago when they are visiting the Titan Trappers. King does not want to be thought of as this revered, godlike figure whose authority is something to be feared and respected. He just wants people to love him and really reach out and try to connect with him and help fill that void of malaise and melancholy and deracination that's been causing him a lot of discomfort and a lot of despondency these last couple episodes. What this episode, O Titan, Where Art Thou, of course, taking its title from a Coen Brothers movie, which itself takes title from a movie within a movie in the classic comedy film Sullivan's Travels. What this episode provides us is something that, as I said in a previous analysis, we haven't had a lot in the Owl House. That is, a character has time to process the revelations they have discovered and the fragmentation those revelations have inflicted on their overall worldview and sense of self without having their journey be disrupted immediately by some larger scale practical challenge that they have to attend to for the necessity to themselves and others. Now, the Luce and Ida side of the episode, despite starting off quite innocently, becomes quite tense as they're captured and taken to the Emperor simply because Ida, not having a plan, wants to send Luce home, and Luce, bitter and resentful at Ida for not trusting her and not thinking of her as a responsible witch, and instead, in Luce's mind, just thinking of her as a kid, fights against Ida, and their conflict causes their cover to be blown and the Emperor's coven guards to realize what's happening and thus capture them. But the king side of the episode is much more low-key. It's almost simple. King runs off, doesn't know where he really wants to go, has an interaction with someone he doesn't know, who then gives him the support he needs, and he has time to really consider what he's gone through and what he really wants for himself, and how the power and influence that once compelled him does not satisfy him anymore. And after going through all this, he's able to rejoin our group with a more complete and united understanding of himself and his position in the world. His psyche has been stitched back together. This is, of course, what we want for all our characters, but often in the show, they've been too frayed and too desperate to deal with practical circumstances to really have that healing process that they seek, which is not a bad decision, for the record. I like that because that sort of blurry, hazy, messy instability with characters having to tend to other problems when they haven't fixed their own lends the show a lot of depth and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of jagged, phantasmal instability that makes these episodes a lot more captivating. But it is good to have a few episodes now and then that just linger on characters like King, trying to piece together their broken sense of identity and trying to figure out what they stand for and what they want and what their relation with others is. They have to try and figure out a sense of values and ethics for themselves, since they're feeling so unmoored and completely broken off from any sense of tradition, from any sense of a clear conception of a past that they can relate themselves to. They're just left alone to try and figure themselves out, with, thankfully, the help of others. And they're left alone to try and figure themselves out, and thankfully they find others to help them, even if they're not the others that these characters expected to find. Well, I wouldn't call this my favorite episode of the show. It is a nice breather episode before our explosive finale at the end of Season 2, with us only having 2 more episodes to go, and the second to last episode starting the whole Day of Unity plot that will probably take us to the end of the show. And of course, Season 3 is only 3 episodes, even if they're double length, and these episodes just exist to close up all our loose ends and provide us a nice cathartic finale, and thus are probably not going to have any time for these smaller scale stories like we see with King here. The only family King has to rely upon is not Lilith, who inadvertently makes him more self-conscious and doubtful of himself and what he wants for himself, but Luce and Ida, and they're not there for him. They're off bickering. For understandable reasons, perhaps, but they're not there for King when he needs them to be, and they'd both likely feel horrible if they knew what King was going through because they weren't there for him. I do love the resolution to the Luce and Ida plot. Ida realizes that Rain has been hiding things from her. That Rain had constructed this elaborate facade of pretending to be mind-controlled and brainwashed just to keep Ida safe, and Ida, while understanding Rain's position, feels a little isolated from that, and probably a bit resentful, and through these experiences she understands how she's making Luce feel. While her intentions were good, as she didn't have a plan to help stop Belos, she doesn't want Luce to think that... Ida thinks that Luce is just kind of a worthless annoyance, just some distracting little kid who doesn't know what she's doing. Luce wants to be thought of as, if not an adult, then at least a mature, thoughtful teenager who is capable of urging what is best for others, and especially those she deeply loves. She feels guilty for helping Philip, and she knows the risk Belos poses to the people she loves the most, and she wants to try and stop him because of that. I'm really interested to see how that develops in these last couple episodes of Season 2. As for King, he realizes that, as William James teaches us, our senses of self are always changing. There is not this one singular self, this one singular identity that we have to find, because ourselves are always in flux based on our experiences and our interactions with reality around us, and that reality is always changing, so ourselves, our very beings, are as well. That's not necessarily comforting, but it does mean that we don't have to be who we were, that we can change for the better, and develop new conceptions of ourselves, as King does here, and he seems much happier and more serene by the end of this episode. Surrounded by those he loves, not being thought of as just a titan to either despise or worship, but as an individual who is trying his best but needs the help of those around him. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this before anyone else. Keep watching The Owl House. What do you think about King's reaction to being a Titan? Sound off in the comments below. Also, I'm really fascinated to see what the show does in its last couple episodes of Season 2. It's going to be interesting. Also, Amphibia's finale is going to release on the day I release this video, later today, so make sure to watch that. It'll probably be really good. Anyway, tune in soon for the next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you all that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.